GM, and welcome to From A to Z. I'm Zombie Shepherd, and yeah, let's get into it. Um, you know, I have really had some time to think about things and put it into perspective, and there is a lot of disillusionment you can come by, especially when you see a lot of the infighting and whatever. But a couple of things really struck me going through a lot of different things. I came to a, a conclusion, which is, whenever you're going through the disillusionment or whenever you're going through the times where it's hard to see, like, where we're supposed to be going, um, one, uh, like, it's so there's a couple things. One, you can dive into reading and listening to things that realign you, meaning, like, look for things that question exactly what you're talking about. So I did this a couple of different ways. One, I literally had some math conversations with AI about, like, what mathematically is possible. And that actually, I was trying to find that conversation and I couldn't. I don't remember if I had that with Venice or ChatGPT, but I couldn't find the conversation anywhere. So I need to figure out where I had that conversation, so that I can reread it. But basically, that kind of did add to the disillusionment in the sense that it was very like, it basically, in order for us to support the level of population that we currently have and a growing population, everybody in the world would have to take a drastic lifestyle cut. And I think that is a little bit of propaganda in the sense that it might be kind of true. Um, but I think that the average is thrown off in the sense that, like, I don't know exactly how the AI gathers I was asking kind of general questions, and maybe I needed to be a little more specific in the sense that it was vibey in this, like, meaning at first it was like, I asked about, like, what it would look like, how many people the world could afford to have at a high end lifestyle, and it's kind of like vague as what is a high end lifestyle, but it was basically like, oh, we could only have a population of like 2 billion or something like that. So if you look at it like that, the world's overpopulated. But then I was like, oh, what about, like, the average American lifestyle? And that was where it got realistic because it was still only like 4 billion or something like that stretched. But that's because the average American lifestyle is, like, greatly better than the way that most people in the world are living, in a sense. And what I mean by that is, purely based on energy consumption. So regardless of whether or not, you can afford to buy a house and you can, um, afford to have investments and that stuff like that, like, the amount of energy that the average American consumes is, like, way more energy, therefore a bigger carbon footprint. And that was the gauge that I was measuring by with this, was like, first it was based just on energy, and then it was started to be based on, like, carbon footprint and climate. And basically I was trying to get to math to prove that we could do it. And asking the questions these ways are very basic, but I wanted it to be basic because, like, it's hard to explain things to people, if you get very complicated. And this already is kind of very complicated, but I wanted it to be basic in the sense of, like, what are we talking about in terms of lifestyle and stuff like that. So I was still not satisfied because I was like, this feels like, I guess if it was kind of thinking, like, it was averaging, like, if you brought everybody's lifestyle, like, global population, like I said, I need to find the conversation because I'm kind of ill remembering it. It was a while back, but then then I started to talk more about like efficiency and global, you know, like I guess it was very much looking at it using today's metrics, and I started saying, well, what if we got into a more cooperative global system? What would that look like? And it basically got to the point where it saw in the conversation like, oh, this is a very Malthusian trap where, you know, yeah, I really wish I could find the conversation because I'm not doing it any justice. And the point that I'm really getting at with this was that it was one of those things where it put it in a very realistic sense, and it did kind of like pull me out of the disillusionment, but not really, because it was still very much like I'm also very distracted because this cat keeps digging his claws into me, and it's very hard to think when you have cat claws in you. Yeah. And that's what sucks about having animals, is because you want to love them, and then, you know, you want to have them on the podcast, but they are not helpful guests. And I'm like covered in cat hair too. And it's not like I don't love him all the time. He just sees whenever I start talking to the camera, he decides it's his time. And I'm really upset I can't find the damn conversation that I had. Because I was having this conversation with Z-Fi, and it's why I kept doing the AI thing to go back and be like, I don't, like, he was getting numbers that were like very depressing. And so I was like, hold on, how are you running these numbers? And so I went with his line of thinking, and then I took it even further. The other thing that can make you kind of disillusioned is when when it's very basic to say, oh, just tax the rich. And while we do need to do that, the other part of like the whole abstraction of money is that a lot of this wealth isn't real. So there are no dollars to give anyone. Like, it's very much an illusion. And the more that you say like, oh, we can take from that invisible pile of money, that actually doesn't equal food or resources. And so that's why I was coming at it more from the perspective of, what does a redistribution of our supply chain look like? What does it look like if we live under a system that is more worried about people instead of money? Because money is not actually real anymore, in the sense that it no longer reflects actual value of anything. Like, the things that people pay the most money for are not worth the money that they're worth the imagination. Like, a Ferrari is not worth the money that you pay for it. The designer goods that you buy are not worth the money that you're paying for it, especially when a lot of it is like, like third world country, quote unquote. Like, they're just buying it from other countries and then rebranding it as like fancy because they put their little like emblem on it. And so like the idea of beveling goods, and 99% of crypto, or I mean, really you could say 100% of crypto is based in that. Like, and that's me as a pro crypto person saying that. Like all of this money as an illusion, like, the reason capitalism sucks is because money's not being used to translate actual value. It's being used to conflate like invisible, intangible social clout and things like this. It's like basically just a big popularity contest, and that whole system and that point system leads to the terrible outcomes of that island and those files, and the way that we see celebrities treat normal people. All of that is a system of this type of market in which money is not being used to talk about actual value of goods, but to conflate social status. And so that's why I was looking at this from like, what can the resources that we actually have do to help global population. Like and the other reason I dug into this is because so I did that Tale of Two Unks poem, and part of that, like, one of those people had said something about the world being overpopulated, and he's a liberal Democrat, and so I thought about how, like, even and you know, kind of the same thing with Zephi, like he was also saying the world's overpopulated. I'm like, so even people that are on the left, even people that are Democrats or liberals, very much buy into this whole Malthusian, like the world is overpopulated. So my point in talking to AI in this mathematical way was to get to the mathematical, like, are we actually overpopulated? If we feed, clothe, and house everyone, are we overpopulated? Because another one of my arguments was that, like, you know, like, if you look at the density population of cities, well, part of the density population of cities is capitalism, because we could actually put resources in more remote areas and build up more areas, but it's not economically viable to just, like, do that. Because what's the market and what is this and what, and so, like, when China does this though, so, like, I know a lot of people would be like, well, why would we just build a city somewhere? It doesn't make any sense. China, this is one of the things they do. They'll build infrastructure, and then they will, you know, kind of hope that the population moves into it. Now, don't get me wrong, they've had times where they were wrong. They do, like, studies and figure out, like, oh, this might be the next spot. So they build up infrastructure with the idea of population expansion. And the U.S. is such a big empty space that we could do the same thing, but it's the same reason we don't have trains. I remember now what got me to the number. The number was, well, what about, you know, because I brought up that we were kind of like in this Malthusian trap, and I was like, but what about if we increase, like, you know, obviously the amount of renewables and stuff, and it was, like, very much still not working with the renewables. I think the renewables got us closer to 6 billion. It was when I started to bring up using nuclear and also being more efficient in production, as far as, like, not just producing for production and capitalism's sake, but producing with common sense in mind and producing working with natural systems. Like, one of these, and some of these things don't make sense under capitalism, but they do make sense in a system in which your number one thing isn't, like, about the money spent, but the overall benefit done to society and or the world. And one of these things that always crossed my mind that is economically inefficient but could still be efficient systems is, like, you know, there's all the salmon that swim upstream that, like, die or whatever, and a lot of them, like, just, like, flop up on the shore or whatever, and a lot of these are never eaten by anything, and it could be repurposed for something. There's a lot of natural systems like this, and that's one that, once again, I saw this a long time ago and had that thought a long time ago. I haven't thought about it a lot, so I'm not super knowledgeable on that kind of thing. I'm just saying there's a lot of natural systems that occur out there that humans could tap into, but there's no market for it. And so this idea that everything needs to be based on a market rather than based on our efficiency within the system, which was another thing that I had some conversations with AI about over the last few months, was about and when I say AI, it's mostly Venice Chat. I don't use ChatGPT anymore. I don't like their practices, and I do some, and because, like, the delta between the models has really collapsed as far as LLMs go. Like, if you're doing coding and stuff like that, there's definitely a difference in what you should use, but as far as LLMs go, like, and having good conversation, for the main reason I use LLMs for this purpose is because a lot of the times I will read about or know, you know, I'll read about complex things, I'll read about, and then I'll want to compare those ideas, and I don't necessarily have anybody I can talk to about these things because they're not as, you know, knowledgeable or well read on, you know, a lot of those types of things. So I'll end up having that conversation with the with Venice mostly. And I was, I had the Azimuth character. I haven't used that very much lately. But anyway, what was the point? Yes. So another thing I got into was I was very much talking about like communism and anarchism and like different indigenous systems and like what would the world have looked like without colonialism. And the point of all this, and I could do an episode where I like go through some of these, but I think it's very yeah, I don't know. I did a few of the AI episodes, and I don't know if there was much of an appetite for me sitting here drinking coffee while an LLM talks to me. I kind of don't like that content on TikTok and stuff. I don't find it easy to watch. And part of it is because I very much understand that when you're having a conversation with LLM, it feels like very fun and informational to you, but like I think a lot of people are dishonest in the way they present that information. And so like being aware that like a lot of people will present this information as truth rather than I was having a conjectural philosophical conversation with an LLM which has all of this knowledge that I have. And where the knowledge is differing, I can question it, and where I'm wrong, I can very much dig into things and understand what's wrong and what's right, because I'm coming from a place of already like having read something or understood something from a perspective, and I'm not letting it inform me entirely on the thing. Rather, I'm having an in-depth conversation with something that knows as much as I do, hopefully, or more. And so, what was the point I was getting to? Yes, that we can create systems like thinking about more communism, more communist, socialist, indigenous theory, and really thinking about how to make the world work for people, make the world work for the world, animals included, and make it better for every living creature to create a more thriving ecosystem. And talking about nuclear and all those different systems involved, like the AI was very much in this camp that like, oh yeah, you're right, we could easily get to 8 billion, and then like assuming that, I mean, for one, we are actually at a point in history where the birth rate is slowing down anyway. So we can easily do it. We can already do it for 8 billion if we changed our systems. And chances are that we'll probably not be going up for the foreseeable future. But the other thing being that like technology increasing over time will give us the runway for more population. We already have plenty of space, and we already have the ability to grow enough food. It's a matter of redistributing it's a matter of creating a better system of distribution, period. A more efficient system of distribution. And I've talked about before, this was just on vibes, but like we know, for instance, that we subsidize dairy and all kinds of other industries. That's one of my arguments about why, like you can be upset about people using AI, but like we spend more water and more land growing alfalfa for, just for beef or dairy that then gets like buried underground or thrown away by the grocery stores because it never gets eaten or used. So there's so much waste in the system. And it's government subsidized waste. And so like cleaning up all of these systems does create a place where everybody in the world, every single person in the world could have a relatively nice quality of life. And it wouldn't be a tax on the system. It would just mean that like people can't have yachts. And It probably would mean that people would have to limit the amount of flights they can take in a year. Because that's another thing that really bothers me about people who are like anti-crypto and anti-AI is like, you use planes. Like, and that is bottom line. Every flight you take is more damaging than almost anything else you can do. There's almost nothing else you could do more damaging than flying. The other thing I read was, crap. Let me pull this up. Anarchism and the Black Revolution. The reason I tapped into this is because I actually know a lot of communist theory and Marxist-Leninist stuff. You know, like I've read a lot of Marx. Oh, by the way, that's another thing I want to throw in real quick. Something I was remembering. Both Adam Smith and Marx talk about how capitalism or markets in general should not be manipulated, meaning there should be no favoring anyone. There should be no like courts that help to keep businesses alive, because those kinds of things produce knockoff effects that actually ruin the entire market. Marx and Adam Smith both agree with that. Anyway, I was just something that popped into my head that I wanted to get out. I actually don't know a lot of anarchist theory, even though I kind of identify as an anarchist. And I guess the reason is because I guess it's kind of propaganda, in the sense that, like, it's even propaganda in the sense that communists don't even recognize anarchists, except to say, like, oh, you're ruining the movement, which is exactly what Democrats say about anybody further left than a Democrat. Like, actual progressives are not liked by centrist Democrats because our Overton window is shifting further and further right. So it's even propaganda, you know, for me to have not read more further left theory. So what I decided was, well, if I'm going to start reading further left theory, and I looked into what I could be reading, I said, well, you know what? Let me start in the deep end and not read, you know, more white men anarchists. Let me like start in the deep end of, you know, black anarchists. And part of that was inspired by some things I had seen, where it was just talking about how even like black feminism doesn't necessarily identify as anarchist, but they have a lot of the same tenets of anarchism. And so then I found something that like actually was an, you know, a black woman anarchist talking about why communism wasn't enough. And and so I read that, and you know, that all of that, thinking about all of that realigned me, because it was like, you know what, like the reason and this is the final nail in the coffin. I saw a video by a dude and his name was Tony, so that really struck home. But I am not Tony, but this guy was complaining about how systems weren't enough. Socialism isn't enough because you have to still deal with the greed and the violence of men. And I agreed with that. And I even said that in my last video. And just listening to this other guy be so hopeless, you know, made me realize, well, I'm not hopeless. Like, I'm looking for hope. I'm not hopeless. I am in a dark place where I'm not seeing the light, but I went looking for the light. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is like, you need to look for the light when you're feeling lost. Like, look for direction in the direction you want to be going. Don't get sucked back. Don't go back to the center. Don't go back to, you know, that direction, because that is giving in. And so, like, what I realized listening to this other guy talk about the evil and the greed and the violence of men and all these things is like, yes, that is true. But the only way you get past that is systems. Because it was very much like, I didn't even watch this whole video because it kind of upset me. It angered me to see it, and it very much touched me in a way where I was like, well, I'm not going to be this guy. And not necessarily because he's a bad person, but because, like, he was delivering a bad message. And I hope that's not what I was doing in my last couple episodes, but maybe it is. But it is greed, and it is sexual desire and all these things that lead to these exclusive clubs and these systems and this want to retain this violence, this patriarchy, all of these things. There's something to be gotten, and there's something, you know, that they will only get by upholding these systems. And sorry, y'all, it's a noisy episode. I got the door open. I didn't turn off any of my fans. I was like, fuck it, we're rocking noisy episodes, you know? I like to live on the edge. I think I'm done with polished episodes. Oh crap, I turned on the AI thing, you see? No, I want to do more like, I want to do more like music stuff too. But anyway, let me get back to the point. All right, so unless you're saying that people individually are going to fix themselves, like, how do you fix the system? Like, how do you get to fix the greed and the violence? This guy was giving up. This guy was very much saying, like, there is no way to fix the greed and the violence, and, you know, we need to just stop advocating for socialism because you know, it's not going to happen. Sorry. Like, it's just not, like, it felt very much like he gave up. And like I said, I didn't finish the video. Maybe he turned around and had a revelation at some point, but I wasn't being pulled down that rabbit hole. And it made me realize, like, I'm not pulling people down that rabbit hole either. I'm not going to be hopeless. I'm only, you know, I'm not going to be a dumbass, like, preaching, like that is my bothered part on the left, is like, if we need to come up with systems that work, we need to have logistics, and you can't have logistics if you don't talk realistic numbers. And that was kind of my point of having that conversation with the LLM, was to get down to the brass tacks of, like, what are the numbers? Because when you start to think about numbers, then you can start to create logistics and systems, and that's what it all takes. And the way that I say this applies to even the greed and stuff is because that is the anti-communist take, is like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Like, if you centralize power in the government, and, like, at least now, like, corporations have power, and corporate power can fight against government power. And so therefore that is some kind of decentralized power system. And I don't, obviously, like, corporations have bought out the government, and now we don't have a working government because under capitalism, like, money's the only thing that matters, and so the government can be bought. And so, like, I'm not one of those people who hates the government because the government is evil and does everything bad, because I'm one of those people that understands that the reason the government's doing all these bad things is because they've been paid to. And who's paying them? The corporations and other countries. Or actually, more importantly, that we really should be talking about is religions. And I'm going to do an episode on the Crusades in which we're going to get deep. I did a lot of research, and I got 10 pages of notes. I don't know how long that episode's going to be, but we'll see. Anyway, so I got cat hair everywhere. Now it's itching my face. I'm not even allergic to cats, but this dude sheds all over me, and then maybe I'm developing an allergy. What's up, Rusty? You coming back? Come on. All right, it is catter day after all, you know? Be nice to the cat. Anyway, so... God damn it. I forgot what I was what I was talking about. Told you, it's the cat, man. Systems. Systems are the only thing that fix anything. You just need to create better systems. And I think that blockchain is part of that. I think crypto and better money is part of that. So the fact that everything is built on bad money, and the fact that every country is currently fighting this this fiat game is part of it. So we need better money. And you can't have a world in which like everybody's not working together. You have to get everybody working together, and that comes down to better systems. And in a way, it comes down to can't be evil technologies. And if you have money that is irrefutably good, this is the Byzantine emperor's problem or whatever, like, and that's where Bitcoin stepped in and kind of created this system. But Bitcoin isn't enough. Bitcoin, and also Bitcoin alone isn't enough. I think kind of like Bitcoin matters because it touches back to the old system, but I think that Ethereum actually is the next system. And maybe it's not, maybe something better comes along, but I think that the way that succession kind of works, like I don't think that like some altcoin further down the line is going to have it unless it's like further down the technology stack, in the sense that like both Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of die away, and further down the line something better emerges, the same way that we're seeing with these cryptocurrencies emerging to be better financial systems than fiat. That's a little divergence to get into the crypto there. And I think AI does also help create a better global consensus, but that's also a side quest. The reason I say it has to be systems, and the reason I say that these systems you have to do it by recreating systems. I'm going to use murder as the biggest example, because murder is one of those things that people still do. And there's loopholes to get away with it. And especially like nation states have the monopoly on violence and are allowed to kill people. But even nation states have laws and ways that they have to kill people within reason. Meaning you can't just give everyone the death sentence, and you can't just even kill enemy combatants without rules. So, but some people can get away with it, as we're seeing currently. I.e., check the Crusades episode that I haven't done yet, but or maybe I have. The reason I say murder is because we've put systems in place, and we don't have Wild Wild West necessarily anymore. Like, we don't have you can't just kill people with impunity. Even self-defense is such a hard barrier to cross through that, like, if you kill someone in self-defense, I promise you won't want to do it again, because of all of the like costs that come with it. Having to deal with it is going to be a nightmare forever. And like in the case of like, Zimmerman, for instance, like, he got away with it and shouldn't have, but he's not living a happy life. That dude is miserable. And so like, even like the people who are wrongdoers that get away with it, and the people who are not wrongdoers, the people who are actually defending their homes, even though a lot of those people that like do it in self-defense are like itching to kill, like there's a lot of people that just want someone to break in so they can hurt them. My point being that, like, in a big way, like, we've kind of ground out the want and the need to kill in the average person. Most people, and this is also maybe part of the systems, but most people get out their itch for violence by watching violence or playing violent video games, or, in some way, like, getting it out through entertainment or some other avenue than to actually have to kill or do violence to other people. And financial tools have a lot to do with this as far as women goes, because when women had the financial tools to start leaving men, then they no longer had to kill them to get away from them. It was like, okay, well, if I can like make money, save money, use credit, buy a house, then I don't need men. And that's kind of what we're seeing going on now. And so like when you take that, like, and then you say, all right, well, there's still a lot of people getting away with physical violence and financial violence on women and people of color and disabled people and elderly people and children. And all of these people are taken advantage of within the system, and it's because the system is currently patriarchy and capitalism. You create a system in which everyone is more equal under the system, more equitable under the system. You stop using capitalism as your metric. You stop using your worthiness to capitalism as a metric. And that really is the root of patriarchy in a sense, is like, it's not just men being in charge, it's men like, and having the hard jobs, because there's a downside. That's actually the biggest, you know, thing about patriarchy, is it doesn't serve most men either. It only serves some men. It creates a system where men and boys go to war for old men. So, you know, and what's their reward? The reward is that, you know, there used to be a system in which women had to marry you because they didn't have their own money. And so like now that the system can't promise you a wife, like young men are angry, and they're like, well, how is it equal if I have to go to war and she doesn't have to go to war, and I have to, you know, I have to work at the septic tank, and I have to dig holes and do oil and all these other jobs that women can't do. And, you know, and that is actually part of it, is like using you for that system. And creating systems in which people have better access to things creates, you know, it does take the pressure. Like, how do you get people to go to war? It's a lot harder when people just have the things they need. Like right now, a lot of people just go to the military and the National Guard and shit because they want college money. You know, if you gave away free college, they wouldn't be doing it. Systems align for what they want to be aligned for, and that's not like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist in the sense that I don't believe that, like, you know, even the idea of like all of these like rituals and occultness and stuff like that, I think all of that stuff that they do is not, for one, it's theatrics for you. You wouldn't be seeing it and recognizing it if they didn't want you to. It's available for you to see. They're making it available for you to see. Just remember that. Anything you're watching, everything you read, see, or hear is a product, including us. So remember that. Like, sometimes you're selling a product that you don't even know you're selling. And so like, don't let your mind fall out about these things, but that's very much why a lot of things take a lot of research and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of like delving into things, because you have to understand where your own biases are and where you're selling propaganda. Anyway, point being that like all the occult stuff is really just like for you to see. It's also to kind of prove a camaraderie. Like, it's kind of like theatrics. Like, if you come do the eyes wide shut thing on my island and wear the mask and act like it's real and, you know, do a little dance and, you know, eat some goat or worse, then like, you know, yeah, like we'll keep sliding you millions of dollars. Like, it's part, like, if you're already a celebrity, if you're already part of the whole, you understand that everything is a show. You understand that everything is theatrics. So like, you go to the Oscars and you stand on the carpet and you do the pose and you do all the things. Like, it's no different. There's no, like, my point is, it's not magic. It's not brainwashing. It's not, the brainwashing is happening to us, the people who take in all the stuff, the people who watch Marvel movies and think Batman is a good person. I know Batman's not Marvel. I'm just saying, like, if you think Bruce Wayne is a good person, you're buying the propaganda. If you think that these things weren't created to sell you, like, for instance, like, even like Superman's a great person, right? But you still are okay with him destroying millions of dollars of infrastructure to stop the bad guy. And that's like one of the things, the biggest propagandas we've ever been sold is like, it doesn't matter how much destruction happens to stop the bad guy. Stopping the bad guy is all that matters. So, like, we have been propagandized to accept every form of destruction and violence. So everything is propaganda. It's just some propaganda is used to steer you back towards your humanity and towards looking at other people, and other propaganda is used to steer you towards products and inevitably, hatred and division. And because you can't really sell any Bevlin good without the idea of hierarchies and the idea that products make you better than other people. Like, you can change your status by changing your lifestyle. Yes. So, whatever. I don't know. I still think you should be reading The Art of War or listening to it on YouTube. I think that you should be doing The Way of Life. I was going to do The Way of Life today, and then I was like, I feel like this always happens. I feel like there's so long between episodes that I just want to, like, catch up, and so I do need to get on maybe a tighter schedule. I'm trying to work it all out and figure out how I want to do it. But also, that's the other propaganda part of social media and all this stuff is like, I mostly do this for YouTube, and then I mostly watch a lot on YouTube, but I feel like YouTube's not as much of a social media thing. YouTube is more for like entertainment and education. But then I get a lot of discourse takes place on TikTok, but I feel like I'm not making TikTok content, I make YouTube content. And so I've been going back and forth with myself, like, and one big thing has been like, I've thought about taking my work underground. And I don't know what that looks like. I've batted around a lot of other ideas. I've thought about just going dark. And I realized, like, that's not really what I want to do. So I don't know. A lot to think about there. I do want to start doing more music, though. I've been thinking that it could be fun to, like, go through my music with y'all. Do, like, listening party type things. Tell me if that's something you're into. The Way of Life, man. Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one to get into. And I kind of feel like part of the reason, that I even like prompts is because prompts let me get into other things. So I've even thought about doing Moloch traps over again. And going through those, because a lot of the time I will talk about, game theory, and we've talked about, we talk about Malthusian theory a lot, which, just to recap in case anybody doesn't remember or I didn't recap that properly, like, Malthusian theory is the idea that we are running up against a cliff of resources, and that human population will outgrow our ability to produce resources, which will throw society into chaos. Anti-Malthusian theory is the idea that as the cliff comes, we will create a new technology that then spurns us into a new system, and that new system invites population growth. It invites a new prosperous golden age. And I'm very much anti-Malthusian. I believe in people, and that's kind of where I was getting at this whole episode, is that, like, we meaning people globally, created the systems we're in now. So, and I believe, like, we created computers, we created artificial intelligence, we've created, cameras, and like, I'm still amazed by vinyl analog technology, because when you think about the idea that this thing can take in sound, keep turning on it, yeah, technology is amazing. I keep accidentally turning on the motion sensor. But when you take a vinyl and you think about the idea that, like, recording something into a piece of plastic going around in a circle, like the physical groove, then playing it again through a speaker produces sound, like, that is amazing. And I think, so, like, that's just a basic technology that's existed for 150 or more years. And, like, so I think that, like, technology is so magical and amazing. And if we, and like the idea of democracy, the way we came out of feudalism and democracy, the way we came out of, like, even pre-feudalism, like, feudalism itself was a technology that broke us out of, like, even, like, under empires, because empires, everything was under one person, and then, like, these governors who could just do whatever they wanted to people. And the limits of the ability to persecute were basically how people live. Like, the empire couldn't actually be, like, hurting and killing people every day, everywhere, all the time. There's not enough bodies. And but it was the unpredictability of living in areas where, like, anybody could come through and begin, killing people and taking their land, taking their property, and all these things. Like, that insecurity, has largely gone away under modern governments, in the sense that, you don't have, even in Europe, you don't have people coming through and burning down your house, and you don't have people coming, like, entire militaries coming through and taking things. And the fact that, like, we don't think about the Third Amendment, and then, the idea that, like, a soldier can't just come and live in your house is so important. But, like, there was a time where, like, that was an actual concern, or we wouldn't have a fucking amendment about it. Like, the fact that could you imagine without the Third Amendment, like, if police and military just showed up and was like, hey, we're sleeping in your house, and, like, the amount of, like, probably sexual abuse that comes with that type of territory, because of the nature of police and soldiers, and, like, the historical nature of, like, what they were promised women. So this entire system is created the way it is on purpose. And so we can just as well create other systems. Like, human ingenuity is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and we could take things into account if we wanted to. And that's really what it comes down to is, because a lot of people get into the, like, oh, well, like, if we go these other routes, we're going to lose AI, we're going to lose technology, we're going to lose capital. Losing capitalism means losing consumerism. And it might mean reining in consumerism. It might mean, but I don't think it means everything goes away. I don't think and I don't think that, because we're here. So maybe you could make the argument that we wouldn't be here without colonialism, or at very least, like, globalism and these things happening. You could make that argument, I guess. Like, which was another reason I had the conversation with AI, because AI kind of steered me on that and was like, no, technology would have developed. It would have developed maybe slower. It would have developed, with more caution. It wouldn't maybe have as exploded as fast. Maybe we wouldn't have got to the moon this quickly. Maybe we wouldn't be at the moon yet. But it's not to say it never would have happened. It might have just happened slower, because we would have approached things with more caution and more energy efficiency, and focus on making people's lives better before getting to the moon, or focus on making people's lives better before creating AI and all these other things. And the only reason we did that is because we're constantly in an arms race. And so, like, maybe there's an argument to be made that there was no other way to get here. And even Marx makes that argument that, like, in order to get to socialism and communism, you actually have to pass through capitalism. And so, but he's also very much a white European man. So, like, that is the European colonialist mindset, that it had to happen. But let's just assume that evolutionarily, like, this was a thing we were going to pass through. And even if we don't want to assume that, we have to just accept the fact that it did occur. And we are here now. And that is my argument for why the things won't go away. We can now change our system. We can pivot away from capitalism. We can pivot away from consumerism. And it doesn't mean that computers go away. It doesn't mean that we limit people's access to technology in a sense of, like, maybe in the sense that you're not going to own a new phone every year. Maybe we're going to have phones that last us 10 years. You know, my phones already last me 5 years. I don't update unless I have to, basically. And, you know, I have a computer behind me that's a 2011 that I, like, restored, and it's like, it works perfect for most things. It works perfect for the things I'm using it for. My main music computer is a mid 2015 MacBook Pro. Like, it still works with my interface, and I'm still making music. There's nothing that an 11-year-old computer, you know, there's things it can't do, yes, but, like, there's plenty. It can still do all the things I'm trying to do. This computer I'm using right here is a little bit newer, but the point being that, like, consumerism will slow. Your access to resources won't be limited in a way. It will be made more frugal. It will be made more intentional. You won't just buy a billion plastic things to throw away. Anyway, point is, like, that is the closed-mindedness that people come to when they're saying, like, oh, it can't be done. It can't be done. You just need to think about how it can be done. And I think that's where a lot of people on the left get caught up, is because people on the right can easily just catch you with, well, what's your solution? And this is the big point. We can think about minor changes. We can think about how to do this, that, and the other, and we can think about major changes as far as, like, redirecting the system and redirecting our values. But we cannot predict the future. We have to work towards something. And so when John Locke and Adam Smith and different philosophers of that time that were talking about economy and the free democracy and coming into this, like, second enlightenment of, you know, almost a rejuvenation of the Renaissance, if you will, like, and that's what we're going through now. I feel like is still happening. It's, like, happening on a bigger level because we're coming out of this golden, like, market. Like, the boomers had a golden market. No middle class has ever existed like that in all of history. That was the golden peak. And the greed of that time period has created this doldrum of now. And so, like, it's not to say we can't have golden periods like that again, but we have to get there with more intention, or it is a bubble that will burst like it did, and is still bursting. The thinkers of those times, John Locke and Adam Smith, that's what I was getting at, even Marx, all of these people saw pattern. They had pattern recognition. They saw something, they pointed it out, and they also put philosophical spins on, like, this is what I think is going on, and this is what I think we need to do. And so that's what makes it go from, like, a social science to a philosophy. And so all of these writers that did these things, didn't know what the future would be. From Malthusian theory, Malthus did not know what the future would be. To Malthus, the future was we are heading off of a cliff. And he didn't know the Industrial Revolution would happen. So it's not your job to know what the future is. It is your job to be hopeful that the future will be better, and to create that future by not losing your vision and not being sucked down into negativity, but rather looking for sources that not just confirm your bias, like, because we're not looking for bias confirmation, we're looking for proof that we can make things work, and we're looking to think about like what made this other system work and how can we adopt things from that to make this work. And game theory is that thing. Like, game theory and can't be evil systems are the thing that get us to that next level. Technology will help us get there, and it's a matter of realigning that technology in a new way. Yeah, so that's it. Don't lose your vision. Don't lose hope. And we will come back soon. Baby's waking up, so I'm going to go hang out with him. And I think I'll do Way of Life. Do some Way of Life prompts. Maybe we'll do Moloch traps. Maybe I'll try to do Moloch traps as one episode or a couple of episodes, a small series, and not dwell on it for each topic. Maybe do some more music stuff. And what else? There was something else I was thinking of. I don't know. All right. I guess I'm going to leave it at that. See you next time.